Over the entire history of the finals, the light and heavy classes have always had a long-standing hatred. Whether it's the hate of certain specializations, weapon combos, damage stats, or just the heavy's big old glorious thighs, there's plenty of different reasons for the hate on both sides. But however, after playing this game from the beta all the way to Season 9, and hating on lights like it's my personal day job, I recently had a small question spark my interest. Why? Why do these two powerhouse classes have so much beef for each other? Why is the community so split? And is it even possible to fix? Well, in order to find all that out, join me as I dive in and break down the arguments and debates on both sides, and attempt to understand the light and heavy rivalry. But however, before I dive into the video, I just wanted to provide a quick disclaimer and say that I know this is an overall pretty decisive and volatile topic, with many of y'all either being hardcore light mains or Chad heavy users. But despite my firm stance against lights as a true heavy main, and my previously stated comments, for this analysis, I wanted to try and stay as neutral as possible, only displaying some of my findings to hopefully further understand and cement a small taste of some of this game's more unspoken lore. But don't worry, I'll say my piece soon. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start off the video with the my 600-pound problem that the lights hate the most, the heavy. Now, most of what I found out about lights hating on heavies is that it's usually stemmed from three main talking points: their survivability, their one-shot capabilities, and their immense objective control. Now, to start off the conversation, we have their survivability. And aside from the obvious 200 HP health difference, this section mainly boils down to the defensive advantages that the heavy carries in pre- and post-fight engagements in order to stay alive far past what a regular light can dish out. Whether it be dome shield, barricades, or mesh shield for quick deployed defense, the heal ball for strong positional advantage, or the goo gun for quick draw delay tactics, these tools provide plenty of baseline advantages for a heavy to block, delay, push, and even turn the fight back around onto any engaging enemy. However, when it comes to the heavy, their defensive capabilities aren't even top 10 on the list of what lights hate about them the most. No, those spots are reserved for our second talking point, the heavy's one-shot death kit. Now, the heavy's death kit are the parts of the heavy's loadout that provide a difficult disposition against nearly any opposing enemy facing it, going beyond the limits of regular damage and utility and turning it into something that I'll admit is absolutely busted. From the winch claw, BFR, RPG, mines, charge and slam, and almost every other thing I pretty much covered in my Broken Builds Part 1 and 2 videos, these topics are amongst the highest argued and debated things when discussing the heavy class. However, in order to cover my bases, and not anger the tiny little light goblins, here are some of the more common points that I almost constantly hear talked about. The winch claw, for its ability to yank and stun a light out of any engagement in order to draw in and cook him faster than me in the kitchen. The BFR, for its ability to do said cooking with 135 easy advantage grapple headshot damage. The RPG, for its use as a secondary finisher for any escaping low health light by doing 110 damage on impact. Of course, not discounting or forgetting the past in Season 1 when it did a whopping 165 damage for that oh so great insta elimination. Please, Embark, bring it back. I miss it so much. And lastly, the sledgehammer, with its immense and overwhelming damage that is second to none in pretty much every close range objective fight. And just like I said before, if you're playing the finals, you're at close range. A lot. However, when it comes to the sledge, what lights are specifically mad about isn't the normal base swing damage or even the ridiculous combo advantages it has with specials like the goo gun or the winch claw, but rather, its massive bonk potential. Touting a whopping 175 damage as of Season 9, this overhead swinging alt-fire ranges at one of the more hated topics amongst heavies due to its guaranteed one-shot, one-kill guarantee at close range. But of course, saying that as a heavy main feels a little bit like an overreaction in my opinion, because just evasive dash backward, lol. I mean, at least half of y'all practically got this thing sitting there untouched like that half-empty water bottle sitting on your desk right now. But in saying that, I know with that whole dash away argument, I know there's going to be times where that just isn't possible. Whether it be because you're exactly like me and wasted all 3 charges in 5 seconds, or just have an extremely unlucky fight in a close quarters cash out. But speaking of cash outs, this brings me on to our third and final point, the heavy's immense objective control. Now when it comes to this last talking point, I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. Because when you combine the strong defense and survivability of point 1, on top of the immense strength and utility of the heavy's kit in point 2, it naturally adds together to make a rough experience for any squishy light that just oh so happens to go anywhere near that objective. But with all these points stacked against the heavy class, the one thing I can truly agree with is how it creates the perception of a low skill, high impact playstyle, with it allowing almost any player to pick up any weapon, gadget, or special and absolutely rock any opposing player. If they have the game skill, that is. But similarly, I could say the same for our next set of arguments, because when it comes to showing off high impact weapons and low skill perception, nobody comes closer on that list more than the small short stack that the heavy loves to attack, the light. Now continuing the trend of making arguments into talking points, we have the fun reasons for why most heavies despise the light class. Now when I was researching everything for this section, I was stunned and amazed by the sheer number of things y'all pointed out. I mean, y'all really hate this little guy, huh? Well, so do I. But that's not the point, because for the sake of time and cohesion, I decided to find the strongest arguments and really dive in on those. And well, I think I found 3 of them that we can all agree on. So going down the list, we have their annoying playstyles, their hard to catch, hard to punish mechanics, and then lastly, just like the heavy, we too have to talk about their very own bad touch loadouts. So starting us off, why don't we go ahead and kick off the conversation with the one thing that I and almost every other heavy enjoyer hates the most about the light, their absolutely annoying playstyles. This covers all the little things and tactics that lights use to annoy and pester you. Things like third partying, vanish pokes, hit and runs, head glitching, dash chaining, HP distance chipping, or pretty much anything that earns that magnificent title of Mosquito. And look, I'm not hating on these tactics. I mean, in some capacity, I can even applaud that ability to find and push the advantage for that leg up in any match. Heck, I even utilized some of them myself to get decent enough footage for this video. But where I can see this being perceived as broken in the eyes of heavy players can be from the sheer fact that all of this just happens practically non-stop. I mean, every single match there will be at least one or more enemy lights utilizing these tactics in some way, shape, or form to constantly one-up the advantage. This is because in order to compensate for their lower health pool, they have to rely on some of the more rattier tactics in order to become the most efficient and deadly class possible. And yes, while I know that this is the exact point of the game, I feel like I'm not the only one when I say it just feels rather draining to deal with overall. And I mean, in a way, it does feel a little bit unnecessary for a light to rely on this kind of stuff anyway, considering the practically endless amount of death tools they have at their disposal. But we'll talk about that soon, because before we can talk about that, we have to dive into what makes some of these more annoying playstyles even possible in the first place with our second talking point, the light's hard to catch, hard to punish mechanics. Now this section covers the one thing that lights do insanely well, yet absolutely abuse to a ridiculous extent. Movement. Now movement to a light is like life itself. It's what they're known for, like peanut butter and jelly, or a Nissan Altima with body damage. This is because it combines the light's natural movement with their already tiny hitbox to easily outmaneuver and outpace any class with relative ease, making them score free of limbs at the best of times, or dash quickly out of combat at the worst of times. Well, at least until they get winched. But where I think I, and most of y'all can agree, that the natural movement of the light class isn't the problem you think of when I say the word movement. No, I think that problem is reserved for the number one most busted and overused specialization in the game, the evasive dash. Now I know, now that I went ahead and made that bold statement, I'm already preparing for the comments down below saying, "Nuh-uh, winch is worse." But since we're the channel of stating facts, did you know that around 75% of light mains will have this as their permanent specialization of choice? What? My source? My source is that I made it the fuck up. But for real, this specialization really does feel like it's everywhere. And that's really no surprise, because if we really just look at it statistically, the net positives you can receive from this are absolutely staggering. Wanna boost forward and get a backstab? Done. Wanna rush in and barrel stuff someone taking your cash out? Done. Wanna escape the winch claw death zone you found yourself in? Done. I mean, the sky's the limit to just how annoying you wanna be. And while yes, I can go on and talk about the invis and the grapple and showcase just how broken they are in their own right, let's be real. We all know this is one of the worst things that the heavy has to deal with. However, it's not the worst. No, that's reserved for the topic you've all been waiting for. Our third and final topic of pure brain-dead headache, the Light's Death Kit. Now when it comes to this topic, most heavy players, myself included, feel as though the Light class is a very strong pool of weapons that can absolutely erase anyone's health and pride in a matter of seconds. Whether it's the shredding DPS of the M11 and ARN, insta-death tools like the knife and double barrel, or the spamming plague of Season 9 that is the V95, no matter what weapon you pick to go up against, the Light's kit will always have some net negatives stacked against you. Now this isn't to say that the heavy doesn't have their very own set of problematic weapons. It's just that when it comes to the Light, they feel just a bit more egregious. Like a great example, the dash backstab. Although tricky to pull off effectively, it's an annoyance that every player under the sun collectively groans and rolls their eyes whenever they see. And as a recap for those who are blessed enough not to run into this yet, the dash backstab strategy is when you utilize the evasive dash specialization to launch yourself forward behind a target and initiate a knife alt attack to their back, dealing a whopping 320 damage to any opposing player when pulled off successfully. Now, just as a little side note, the heavy's total health pool is 350 HP. So yeah, you can probably see why most heavies would be mad about this. And yes, yada yada, it takes skill and all that. But you know what doesn't take skill? The double barrel, which does a massive 360 damage at super close range. And if you're not connecting the dots to why that's bad, let me remind you, the heavy has 350 HP. And that's only just a small drop in the ocean that is the Light's overwhelmingly strong kit. But in order to stay back on topic and wrap this section up, because if I continue anymore I don't think my blood pressure could last any longer, I think the Light has a plethora of problems that are just a massive dumpster fire to deal with overall. But even after saying all that, I feel like the points on both sides just aren't enough. Because out of all the points we fleshed out on both sides, I know that the research alone isn't going to be enough for me to really paint this picture clearly. So in order to dive deeper and learn more about this, I decided to pass the same question on to you, the lovely viewing audience, posting to the r/finals community subreddit in order to hear more directly from y'all. This way we can gather all y'all's thoughts, opinions, and first-hand experiences to really see what's going on. Because just like Joe Mama, I wanted to know how deep this thing goes. And well, after reading through the massive 95 responses I got on there, I found out something pretty interesting. It turns out that most of the arguments that I and a lot of other players had against these two powerhouse classes aren't as black and white as we first initially thought. Instead, they're rather two sides of the same proverbial coin that shift depending on one main factor. And that is skill. And no, before y'all jump in and interrupt me, I don't mean skill issue. That's a totally different topic. But if we do end up going there, don't worry, because I definitely got that in spades. Gamer! Gamer! Please! But no, what I'm referring to is how most player stances I've seen when talking about classes shift depending on what skill level you fall under. Like if you've ever run into a high skill or high elo player, you'll probably see most of them state that the heavy is overpowered and downright broken. Now while at some stances I can agree, this argument mainly stems from the fact that most high skill heavies are able to outposition and absolutely counterplay most lights at higher end matches. This is because of two simple reasons. One, players at higher end elos and skill ratings know all the little tricks and tactics that lights use in order to one-up the advantage, making that simple element of surprise turn into a real DPS detriment for your team in an instant. Then the second and most obvious one, higher skill equals better aiming potential, meaning the already low health that a light receives gets down to 0 faster than your current Tinder notifications in an instant. But of course, that takes us on to my favorite area, the other side, the low skill, low elo players. Now this is the side that will yell and shout from the rooftops that the light is absolutely busted in almost every way. And coincidentally, the reasons as to why are the exact opposite to the reasons set by the higher elo players, with them being unaware or unable to counter the light's tactics and ability usage in an effective way, leading them to be outpaced, outpositioned, and outgunned, causing them to view the light as staunchly busted or broken in multiple instances. But you know, just ignore those damage numbers on the right side. Those don't matter. You just got outplayed. Better gaming chair and all that. Then of course the second, and again most obvious reason, lower skill players more often than not aren't hitting the wild shots that make up for the light's base advantages. So when it comes to distance, movement, or hitbox, it's almost like everything's stacked against you when you're facing a light as a lower tier player. Because with all those topics we discussed and fingers pointed, I know it all feels rather circumstantial. Because when it comes to the question of who is the most broken, or which side is the worst, we could list 1,000 reasons and arguments all day, but there's never going to be a clear winner, because it's always going to be just a matter of opinion. And when it comes to mine, although I'm a bit biased due to being a devout heavy main, I can say that after combing through and researching everything for this video, I can see where both sides are coming from. Like, I agree that the winch claw does need to be tweaked in some degree, the BFR definitely needs to be nerfed in some capacity. This godforsaken weapon needs to be removed from the game now. Dash backstab, although busted, does take some skill to perform well. Evasive dash is definitely a major crutch. And medium players are statistically the cutest players by far, especially when they're subscribed to main. But with all that being said and done, this does still beg the question. Can this whole light and heavy feud possibly be fixed? Well, no. Because when it comes to diffusing the tensions between these two powerhouse classes, I just don't think it's possible. Because you've got to remember, this feud has been the result of 9 straight seasons of straight anger and resentment boiling over itself. Starting all the way back to Season 1 with the Heavy's one-shot RPG and massive shield protections, all the way to now in Season 9 with the Light's damage-ticking pistol and evasive dash abundance. These issues run just way too deep for most players to get over. However, it does make me happy to see that this isn't an issue for some of y'all. But of course with that, I know you're probably all wondering, with all the research and perspectives that I've collected and seen, does this change my perspective on lights? Hell no! Absolutely not. I still hate these little guys. Not because of any specific reason. Well, other than the damage, rattiness, movements, and me generally not being good at this game in any capacity, but mainly because I find the meme to be absolutely hilarious. I mean, destroy these guys on sight. It is hilarious. But of course, with that being said, I still want to pass the question on to y'all. Why do you think the light and heavies hate each other so much? Do you hate a certain class? Why? And do you think Embar could ever salvage this? Let me know what y'all think down below. And also before we go, I wanted to shout out these guys for providing all their opinions and perspectives. Because as much as I want to say I know everything about this game, I truly do not. I will always wear that badge of casual as long as I live. But it does make me happy to have a channel community and a game community that's this open and amazing to provide all those answers. For real. Thanks. But of course with all that, I appreciate y'all joining me for another amazing video. Remember to like, comment, and all that other stuff, and I'll see you in the